Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm so sorry that it's taken me this long to make another video, but I've been working very hard on these two Odin Project projects. And let me tell you, they were super hard. So we've got two today. We've got the restaurant page and the to-do list. So we're gonna start with the restaurant page. All right, so first I'm gonna show you my restaurant page, and let me just say the styling for both of these projects is not going to be that good, but I think as far as the Odin project goes, the point of both projects was not the styling at all. So for the restaurant page, the main point was to do more DOM manipulation, just like back in the Etch-a-Sketch, and to all of the content that you generate has to be generated with JavaScript. So it's also the first time that you use something called Webpack and also JavaScript modules. So let me start with JavaScript modules. JavaScript modules are basically like instead of writing all of your JavaScript on one big page, you split up the JavaScript into other pages that are all within the same directory. So modules can import and export things to each other. So for example, over here in index.js, which is the new main.js, I import all of these other things from other modules. So load HTML from load page is actually a function right here. So I'm exporting it from the load page module and importing it into the index module. So this is your first time seeing modules in the Odin project. And because of that, it's your first time seeing Webpack. And basically what Webpack does is because you have modules, it'll basically take all of your pages, all of your modules, and compile them into one massive main JavaScript code. Kind of like what you did before you used modules. So this is main. It's a total mess. It's difficult to read. But essentially, it's all of the code that you've written packaged into one massive file. And the point of doing this is to make it more performative, I think. Webpack is still really confusing to me, so yeah. But the other thing that Webpack does is it helps you with CSS styling and all of your assets because you can use it to import CSS loaders, etc. So any like images, fonts that you want to use, it'll package those and compress them in a way that sort of optimizes them. So that was the point of the restaurant page. Let me just show you. So you're supposed to create at least 3 tabs, and when you click a tab, all of the content that gets generated is JavaScript generated. So like all of the content on home is the only content that exists right now. As soon as I press menu, home basically disappears and the content is filled with menu. And this is all done with JavaScript. So to go over what went well for me for this one, I would say that playing around with the modules was super fun. It's so cool that you can have a bunch of different JavaScript files and they can all talk to each other. I don't know why, but that just like gets me. Like, it's so cool. So I really liked creating the tabbed browsing. Basically how I did it is these are like buttons. When you click on them, just like I was showing before with the load home stuff. Whoops, wrong one. When you click on a button, it uses one of the imported functions from the load pages and it loads the page. So like if I were to click the menu button, boop, all this stuff fires off. Oh my God, wrong one again. All this stuff fires off over from load page or menu. So menu has its own module and it is generating all of the content when I click that button. So that was really fun. Basically, the way that I did this, and I had a lot of help from people on Twitch because I live streamed this, is we sort of created a virtual DOM. And from what I was told, this is essentially how React works. I don't know much about React. All I know is that it's like a framework, but this is how it works. So we have one massive class called element. And with this class and all of the modules that it has, not modules, methods that it has, you can create a virtual DOM element that can then be used to create a real DOM element. So for example, if I wanted to make a div with some text in it, right? I would use the element class and I would say, this div equals new element. And the constructor, the stuff that you give to the constructor basically guides what happens next. So you put in the element type, it'll be like div, and then you can add attributes and stuff. Like I want the class to be this and the ID to be that. And every time you create an element using the element class, each instance has its own build method. So the build method is really cool because it takes all of the virtual attributes and stuff that you've given it and creates an actual DOM element. So anytime I'm out here in index, I guess we can let's go to menu. Anytime I use this new element, see, I'm creating an image element, setting attributes, blah, blah, blah. I can add children, which are other elements that we create with the element class. At the very end of all this, when you create your entire element, you call the build method and it will build the actual element that's going to get attached to your page. So that was super fun and super cool. It was amazing to me. Like, coding is magic. I was so excited to learn all that. So what didn't go well? Basically, Webpack. Webpack and NPM, super confusing to me. Like, I understand the basic concept, but it comes with all this sort of confusing stuff. Like, this is the config file. And for me to be able to use these style and CSS loaders, I have to know how to syntax this out. This is also the first time that we use JSON formatting. So you have a package.json that does some stuff, basically keeps track of all the types of things that your Webpack is using. Can you tell how confused I am about this? It causes some issues with Git sometimes, and I just did not have a good time with Webpack. I'm still really confused about it. That's basically what went wrong with the restaurant page. Also, the styling's not great, clearly, because it's all JS generated with a style sheet attached, but it's kind of difficult to style dynamic things. So the styling's kind of crappy, but that's fine. So let's move on to the to-do list. This is the main reason I have not been able to create a video in so long. The to-do list legitimately took me almost 2 months. And I'm talking streaming this pretty much every weekday for 6 to 10 hours a day. It took me this long. And a lot of people would come into the chat and be like, oh yeah, I've done the to-do list. It's really hard. Like, apparently this is just one of the projects in the Odin Project that is not a piece of cake like the others. So let me tell you about the to-do list. I'm going to show you how it looks. It looks like shit. And that is because by the time I got to the point where this was like working, I did not want to style. Like, this is the styling that I've done. And this is what you get, you know? So the point of the to-do list, as far as the Odin Project tells you, is more DOM manipulation. Again, you're creating all the HTML with JavaScript, more use of modules, and then this is the first time you get to use external libraries, which are basically modules that other people have written that you can download and use in your code. It's also it's your first time getting introduced to object-oriented programming principles, and we'll go into that because it's difficult. All right, so what went well? Again, more DOM manipulation. I don't know. It's super fun. I did the same thing. We have an element class just like before, but we also have these other classes that help us handle all of the code. So before I go into that, let me just show you what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to create to-do items, have projects, you know, delete them, edit them, whatever. So if you come over here, these are like already loaded into, these are like my test projects. But if I wanted to add a project, you get a little form over here. You say, I don't know, I want to bake a cake or some shit. I don't know. Now bake a cake comes down here. If you click this, now you can add a to-do item. I have to buy eggs for my cake. And I got to do this, I don't know, the 11th. It's a high priority and I have not completed it. So you submit that. There's your to-do item. Now, the way that we organize this, and this is the external module we used DateFNS. So DateFNS is a giant body of code which basically gives you a bunch of methods you can use to format and create dates. We'll go into it in a bit, but just to explain how this like works physically on the page, when you press week and you have bake a cake, this is everything that would be due this week for your bake a cake project. Month will show you everything due for the month. Again, if I change which project I'm on, it's sort of like a grid system the way I did this. And then if you have all projects and you have this month, it's going to show you all your to-dos due this month from all the projects. And if you go all projects, all time, it's all your to-dos ever. All right, so let's get into the code a little bit. What went well for this, like I said, was the DOM manipulation stuff. We do have another element class, which just like in the restaurant page creates virtual elements, which I was calling virtual boys. And you can build them. They have their own build method so that you can take these virtual elements and make them into real boys. You build them and then you hand them over to the real DOM and it, you know, does what it does, sticks it on the page. But we also played with some other classes. So we used a lot of classes in this. And I think this project was where you sort of learn classes for the first time. So the other classes we have a project class. So every time I make a project, I'm using this class to create it. And the project is in charge of keeping track of all of its to-dos. It has this array where all of the to-dos will be placed. It has its own ID and it has a name. So this is part of the constructor. All that the project does is it appends to-dos into its array, and it will, if you ask it, it will give you all of the to-dos that are within a certain time interval. And that's how we basically handle this. So when I click week, I'm basically if I click my project this week, I'm basically asking that instance of project class for all of its to-dos that are within this time interval of week, and it'll paste it up there. So that's the project class. The to-do class is a little more intense. It has a name, it has a priority, it's marked whether it's completed or not, and it has a date for when it's due. So we have getters and setters, which is also a new thing you learn for these projects, to set some of these properties. And then it also has its own methods. So we have one method to check if a date that has been entered when you create a to-do is valid. And that's using DateFNS again. You can see that I imported some stuff from the DateFNS external module. And then you also have build virtual boy, which basically the to-do item is in charge of knowing what it will look like as far as the HTML. So we're using the element class again to build a specific looking element to be built. And when you have a to-do instance and you call build virtual boy, it will create this element using the element class and give it to you. And then the DOM can use it to append it to the page. If that makes sense. I hope it does. And then it can also do this get formatted date thing. So one more class that we used that was interesting for me was this librarian class. Now the librarian class is static, and I'm still trying to grasp what static means, but basically it's sort of if classes are like blueprints, a static class is kind of like a blueprint, but you don't truly make instances of it. So there's really only one librarian. So the librarian in this sense was meant to keep track of all of the projects. And so this is how I tried to practice object-oriented programming. The point of object-oriented programming is that objects are responsible for what they do. You don't give their responsibilities off to other things. It's kind of a difficult concept to practice. You can get it, you can like understand it vaguely, but I think it's going to take, at least for me, a lot of practice to really understand what it means. But for the librarian, I think it's a good example of how I tried to make this object-oriented, because the librarian has only a few jobs and she's in control of, she's the only one, for example, who knows of all of the projects. So if any other piece of code wants to know about projects that are current, it has to ask the librarian. So that's what this projects array is. So this is how you would ask the librarian for projects. You would say librarian.getAllProjects, and she will give you her entire array. She's also in charge of adding projects to the library, right? And she's in charge of deleting projects. So the librarian, the way we built this, the librarian knows all of the projects. Each little project is not aware of the librarian, but each project is aware of its own to-dos. So that's why it has its to-dos array. And then each to-do has no idea about its project. So do you see how the responsibility is like, they're not sharing responsibilities that they shouldn't be? It's basically you're trying to encapsulate code and you're trying to keep it very specific to what it's supposed to be doing on its own. But it's kind of a difficult subject to grasp. I tried very hard to make this object-oriented, and there's a joke going around in the stream right now about, is this OOP? Because I ask it like 5 times a day every time I'm streaming. Is this object-oriented programming? Is this object-oriented programming? And the answer usually is not quite, but you know, sort of. So I'm still trying to learn that. So what didn't go well? The OOP stuff. I would say, even though I have a much better idea of what object-oriented programming is after having done this, it's still something that, like, if you gave me some code and asked me if it was object-oriented, my answer would probably be wrong. It's just, the Odin Project makes it out to be, you know, they tell you about all these principles. They make it out to be like sort of easy, but it really is not. And it seems like it's something that's going to take like a lifetime of practice. And then of course, Webpack. Webpack was still super confusing to me, especially on this project. Right at the end, I was trying to get it all uploaded to GitHub. I didn't really know how to use the .gitignore. So I was uploading like the entire main like dist folder with all the node modules, which is massive, and like I think Webpack and that sort of stuff is still going to take a lot of practice for me. And I want to say the Odin Project did not go over it very well. They sort of walk you through another tutorial from a different site, but the site's tutorial goes on for many pages, and the Odin Project will take you and drop you in the middle of it, and then pick you up again and drop you in the middle of it somewhere down the line. So you miss all this stuff that you needed to understand. It was really confusing. So that's my first big like complaint about the Odin Project. But other than that, it's been great. So this is what we got. This is why I've been gone for so long. It took so long to do this freaking to-do list. Like, I couldn't even really tell you why, except that it was just complicated. It's way more complicated than you would think. You think it's just a to-do list, right? No. No. But I'm glad that it's over. I think the point that the Odin Project is trying to get at is they want you to be really good at vanilla JavaScript, because we're about to learn frameworks like React and stuff. And so I'm not going to make any promises about timelines anymore, because I have no idea what's to come, but hopefully it'll be good. And as far as these two projects go, I learned a lot. I learned a lot on these two projects. Don't let this video discourage you from doing them. Definitely do them. They're rough. They're definitely a little rough. Not really the restaurant page, but the to-do list is rough, but I learned so much doing it. So yeah, thanks again for stopping by. Again, I'm so sorry it took forever. If you're interested in watching me code, I get a lot of questions about, showing tutorials and stuff. If you're interested in seeing me code more, come check out the Twitch. I'm on every weekday, pretty much, and I'm just coding the whole time. There's lots of people in chat that are helping out. We got a Discord, we do AI art. We're also working on a horror game as a project where I'm learning C# and Blender and Unity and stuff like that. So if any of that stuff interests you, definitely come over to the Twitch. There's way more content. Over here at YouTube, I just want to be able to put out videos about the projects, and if it takes me another 2 months, hopefully not, but I want to put out good projects for you guys over here. So if you miss me, definitely come over to the Twitch, come to the Discord. We're all hanging out pretty much every day. All right, that'll do her. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope I see you soon. All right, bye.